Whatever else you can say about Revenge of the Sith, it is a movie that is, was, and will likely be hotly debated for a long, long, long time. And it's interesting how even ideologically it split people. This video will take on two people primarily. It'll take on Cosmonaut, Variety Hour, and then Critical Drinker. I'll start off with Drinker and mock his ignorance, but then we will get to Marcus, who also makes a massive analytic error. So we've been tracking some of Critical Drinker's, to put it mildly, really, really awful moments where he isn't even being competent anymore in reviewing or talking about a film or television show.
To discover his own strength, even though he shouldn't have lost it in the first place because he fucking killed Anakin, or he defeated Anakin when he was at the height of his powers. Now he's just some fucking like burned corpse.
So that's right. So he's criticizing Disney for not really understanding Star Wars and apparently not really watching the prequel movies. And the problem, of course, is apparently he's done the same thing because he couldn't even remember that Darth Vader survived the fight with Obi-Wan on Mustafar, even though that is literally the most critical plot point of the entire film. It's not even something we could argue about. It's not one scene, one line of dialogue. That's the conclusion. You could just check a Wikipedia. You could check any plot summary. It's going to tell you, yeah, Darth Vader survived. Now, being generous, unlike him, I guess we could argue that, well, maybe he temporarily died in the film and then got revived, so he's not wrong. Nope. No, that's not what happened in the film. But if we're going to go down that route of reinterpreting key scenes or key plot points to however you wish, then his problem with the sequel trilogy is what? I can just reimagine things to fit my needs and say it's the most perfect set of films of all time. And if people point out, well, what about this or that issue? We'll say, well, Critical Drinker just rewrote the entire prequel series where apparently Darth Vader died in the prequel series. And to be fair, you might say, well, he corrected himself. Yeah, but why did he get it wrong in the first place? This is supposed to be the real Star Wars fans. How could he possibly how could he get this wrong? That's a major question. Like, if you're supposed to be the true fans and the others are not the true fans, you would be the last person getting such a critical thing wrong, but you just, oh, yeah. I mean, the kid did what they did with the prequel. Oh, wait. Yeah, wait, did he die? No, he lived. Lived, died. Oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm Critical Drinker. Please to give me more money on the super chats, and I will lie to you again. And what I found even more remarkable is the other guests didn't care. Like, oh yeah, I guess you got it wrong. But, we don't really care about the objectivity or the facts or the logic or whatever. I mean, we're going to use the words, but we really don't care about that junk. Okay, all right. Well, it's nice to know he's exposed himself for being the completely ignorant moron that he really is, and doesn't seem to care about it. And now let's hear from Cosmo and his glorious commentary on Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, also, the title crawl tells us that there are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. What the fuck does that mean? There aren't any heroes on the evil side. George, you need to proofread your work.
Well, you get the joke. Namely, wait, heroes? Both sides? George, who are you talking about? No, Dooku does do a lot of heroic things. We hear about it in Attack of the Clones. And I know he just didn't pay attention. He does offer the Jedi to not kill them at the end. When they invade Geonosis, he does say, put down your weapons, no harm will come to you. Now, was he lying? Was he bluffing? And believe me, I'm not someone who thinks everything George Lucas does is brilliant. I think what he's pointing out is this thing is ambiguous because, yes, the Jedi may have good reasons to be on Geonosis, but technically they did, in fact, invade a sovereign planet, so they're there illegally. And in a deleted scene, they go through this formally where they're actually judged. You violated the law. That's why you're going to be executed. So if you actually paid attention to the trilogy carefully, he's pointing this out quite a few times, that the Jedi are not always doing the right thing. They're fairly ambiguous. Now, I understand maybe with Dooku, people might understand that, but Grievous is also a more conflicted hero. The problem is Lucas cut out a lot of the backstory. There's even some contradictions in the canon, because if you follow the cartoon, they give you a little bit more on Grievous, and he's a little bit more complex than he appears in Revenge of the Sith. But in Sith proper, yeah, he's much more of a villain. But nevertheless, there are scenes that keep pointing out these ambiguities. In fact, Padme says outright to Anakin, she thinks they're the enemy, that somehow they've been corrupted by the war. I get it. He thinks the prequel trilogy is an entire joke, thinks it's silly, it's stupid, but I do find it interesting that even people who hate the prequels keep making a lot of excuses for Revenge of the Sith and think it's the best of the prequels, though they don't really provide many good points for that. In fact, they keep pointing out a lot of problems and errors, and they don't even seem to remember or understand the film. So it just feels like with the prequels, as well as Revenge of the Sith, they're suffering from the dilemma of consensus. Namely, a consensus used to mock them as the worst thing of all time, but now it's shifted to the other opposite extreme that they're some of the best films of all time. And I agree with that, but my scale is still very harsh. I would be convinced that it's a top 50 film, but not a top 5 film, or even top 15 or 20 film. But it's definitely an incredible film on many levels, but really, the people standing up for it don't seem to know what they're talking about, even when they're being very harsh to the prequels overall.